have a speaker, Professor Isabel Poso. She is a full professor at Education Science School, National University of Rosario, Argentina, and she works as well as a researcher of National Scientific and Technical Research Council of Argentina at Rosario Institute of Research in Educational Sciences. She did her master's in teaching Spanish as a foreign language and graduated from Barcelona University in Spain. She did a number of visiting research in different universities, a few in Vancouver, Canada, and others in Belgium and Denmark. Please welcome Professor Maria, and please start, Professor Maria. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne, very much. Let me start by sharing my screen. Okay. Okay, well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Many thanks to the organizer for this kind invitation to such a prestigious event and for the enormous organizational work. I'm very pleased to know that you have chosen such an important and much needed topic as the theme of the conference. I am also pleased to know that you have thought of a keynote from such a remote part of the world like Argentina. When the current Pope was chosen as such, he said, a Pope from the end of the world. So here you have someone else from that place. I will start by introducing my institutional background briefly, and from there I will move smoothly to the topic of my presentation. I am a professor, as Anne said, at the School of Educational Science at the University of Rosario. It's a public university with more than 70,000 students. I am also a researcher at the National Scientific and Technical Research Council, which is the main agency that fosters science and technology in Argentina. Its main objective is to boost and implement scientific and technical activities in the country in all different fields of knowledge. Currently, it has, well, researchers, doctoral and postdoctoral grant holders, technicians and professional staff, and administrative employees. Founded in 1958, its first president was Bernardo Hussey, a Nobel Prize in Medicine in 1947. It developed several funding actions related to doctoral and postdoctoral studies and research stages, scientific and technological research projects, and national and international exchanges. So please keep this name in mind because it could be a very nice institutional partner or target. It covers all areas of knowledge, not only STEM or engineering. As regards as women, the Research Council has developed some actions devoted to its promotion. For example, the creation of this website, this part of the website is a virtual space devoted to women named Women in Science and Technology, with the idea to promote and to exchange experiences so that to encourage scientific vocation. Doing this by sharing or making visible the stories of some select women scientists and making them visible. In spite of these valuable actions, there are still some loopholes that we can discover where these measures still have not arrived. For example, on the institutional website, the presentation of the technology area, where of course we have engineering, is illustrated only by a man. And the same thing happens in the technology transfer office. Or let's look at this computer engineering project carried out by a team of 10 people, out of which only 3 are women. As regards statistical data, the information about gender shows a growth in the number of women in the institution personnel, which is of course a very good news, but the information is not discriminated as regards level, area of knowledge. It's presented all in blocks. So this mixed situation is generally observed in gender studies. Some gains, but still some outstanding issues. Whereas gender issue is still ambivalent, the completion of postgraduate career is a must for those who wish to engage in a research career. In the same way, increasing women's visibility should be a must at institutional level. Based on this dialect, I will address postgraduate education in women engineers through the thesis or dissertation as a key element for its completion, and also as a tool for making visible the contribution of women in engineering. Why is it necessary to focus in women engineers postgraduate education completion? First of all, because it's a requirement for a research career, also for university teaching posts, and although not always, for some professional fields. Because the completion of postgraduate programs in general has been a difficult issue to solve worldwide, and therefore I have been working on it for some years with the national team, basically as regards some didactical approaches. Because the postgraduate thesis constitutes an original and relevant academic product capable of making women in engineering visible. We could say it's almost a masterpiece because it demands a lot of dedication, rigorosity, so it's an ideal object to make them visible. And because it is an area of education very little addressed in gender studies. They focus mainly in professional areas or in academic, but at graduate level. So we see studies about how many engineering women graduates or professors, or how many women we have in companies or in management position. Instead, postgraduate dissertation, we could say, is an underexplored dimension of women in engineering. So due to its importance, because it's in the culmination points of a quaternary education, it's interesting to revise the presence of women there and to see how they can surpass, they can defeat this low rate that we have at worldwide level. So far we have few engineers, few women, few postgraduates. It seems we will find a desert, but we will see. Therefore, this presentation aims to examine the gender gap in engineering postgraduate dissertations available at institutions' websites during the last 20 years in a paradigmatic country of Latin America, which is Argentina. The specifics of objectives are to determine the number of women who author those postgraduate engineering theses, the evolution of the number, and the proportion of women. The rest of the presentation will be divided in two stages. First, a literature review of reports, articles, and then an empirical work with original results taken from Argentina. So, when searching for studies focused in postgraduate thesis, there is one that investigates doctoral dissertation in another area of STEM, which is physics education, conducted in Turkey between the years 2010 and 2015. It's a very complete study. You can see all the variables that are taken care of, but gender is only one among all of them. Anyway, it's interesting to know that out of the 78 doctoral dissertations that are visible in the national repository, 58% are written by males, whereas 42% by females. Another similar study is one of Mosteiro Garcia and Porto Castro, which is focused on doctoral theses in the area of science and technology defended in Galicia, in Spain, during 2004 and 2013. In this study, an analysis by gender was carried out as regards authorship, supervision, and the composition of the juries. In a total of 1,915 doctoral theses, the results according to authorship are very even, we could say, although the number of men is slightly exceeds very little women. We have 2002 against 913. The evolution of this authorship per year shows a not very constant progression in the period in both and women. As regards the supervision, we can say that 3/4 of this correspond to male, and the composition of the jury is clearly and predominantly male, 59 against 41%, playing the role of president or secretary of the court in most cases. Therefore, the presence is relatively high with regard authorship of doctoral thesis, although it is much more scarce in supervision and jury's composition. Then, a longitudinal study of doctoral courses in Spain throughout 1997 and 2000 indicates that women are the majority of all doctoral students in all areas, unfortunately, except engineering, where it is around 25%. Regarding theses read by women in engineering and technology, there is a slight increase between the first and the last year, but with a decrease in the middle. In the distribution of theses read by women by areas, the highest percentage is in experimental and health sciences, followed by the social sciences, the humanities, and finally, engineering and technology. The last study that I have found that I would like to share with you does not exactly coincide with my subject, but it's close to it because it refers to academic production. It's a paper named The Research Journey Through a Gender Lens. It analyzed information about authors of academic publications, grant recipients, and patent applicants to gain insight in gender-based representation across 15 countries and the European Union. It focuses in many sectors, including business, education, government, research. And we can say that in all the countries featured in this report, the increases women author is closing the gender gap. Even in some research areas, authorship is approaching gender parity, particularly among authors with a short publication career and within the health sciences. In some subjects like nursing and psychology, women now represent the majority. Conversely, men are better represented among with a long publication history, across all subject areas within the physical science, and at last as corresponding authors. In all countries' studies, the ratio is increasing more during the last 5 years when compared with the last decade. In addition to global trends, there are some notable country-specific findings. For example, Argentina was the closest to gender parity among authors overall, while, for example, Japan has the lowest ratio of women to men among authors in all subject areas. And another curiosity, Spain and Mexico has the largest increases in the proportion of women among inventors. Well, as it can be seen from this literature review, Doctoral dissertation in engineering has been an underexplored dimension everywhere in the world, and especially in Latin America. Therefore, the second part of this presentation is an empirical study focused in Argentina for two reasons. Because the country attracts postgraduate students from the whole continent, you see the majority from Colombia, Ecuador, Brazil, etc. And because Argentina is one of the Latin American countries with the highest number, you see here, the dark green, with the highest number of female researchers. And I would add a third reason in the context of this EDUCON conference, and it's an ideological and geopolitical reason, that is to show a region that is almost absent in many European conferences. So the method we are carrying out after this bibliographical review, we are carrying out a quantitative study based on documentary analysis. In this case, our primary data were theses available in Argentinian university repositories. These sources of information guarantee that data availability, and also it's an indicator of women visibility that, as we saw previously, is an indicator, is a trend, let's say, in gender studies. So for choosing the institution, we took the following inclusion criteria. Universities, of course, with engineering careers, with institutional repositories, complete, because there are some of them are very poor, let's say, in the quantity of information, that the gender of the that these repositories comprises thesis, because some of them only have articles or books, and that the gender of the authors could be determined. That this data is not always available in the statistics. So based on this criteria, we took the National Technological University of Argentina for other extra reasons, and it is a public university, which makes it one of the most numerous. It's the only one that focuses in engineering training, and because it has a very peculiar organization in 30 regional faculties scattered throughout the country, which enables a very complete national perspective, which in an extensive country like Argentina with very different regions, it is very important. Those regions are autonomous to decide which career they want to offer, and even if they want to offer postgraduate degrees. So we have these regional faculties which do offer postgraduate careers. Beside this university, there are other 63 national universities plus other institutes, but we ended up discarding them because they provided a very local perspective with a widespread array of disciplines. Instead, this one seemed to be more useful. The foundation of the National Technology University is linked to the process of industrialization of our economy, related to an idea of economic independence. In an economy which is originally based mainly on agricultural and livestock, which is the image that you probably have about the country, with the fertile soil and the nice weather. In this context, this university is founded with the purpose of providing a university professional training to the workers of the industry. So it is very interesting to see the change in this university from started at the working area and then how it becomes academic by adding these postgraduate proposals. Our study comprises the 3 levels of postgraduate programs, which are specialization, master, and doctorate, which of course, you know, they finish with a different kind of project. The specialization finish with a capstone project, whereas master and doctorate with the thesis but the three of them require a very elaborated intellectual process. And besides these different requirements as a final project, they have a difference, a considerable difference as regards number of hours, specialization 360 hours, master 540 plus the tutoring and some working at the university, and the doctorate 100 credit, which is 1,000 hours. It's important that you notice this because it's different than in Europe. Our study covers the period of 2000-2020 through the institutional repositories, but please take care, keep in mind that the national law that set the obligation to upload all the intellectual production in this repository started in 2013. So these first years that we take in our study may not show the total amount of theses that were defended. There were no national accounting, so we had to do it manually, one by one, in each regional faculty, and then set the total amount at national level. This was made by my dear and great licentiate candidate, Nara Alegre. She did an outstanding job, so congratulations, Nara, and great job, really. So, no matter, as I was saying, if we don't have the total amount of thesis that was defended, what was important in this study was the visibility and the percentage of women and men. So at this point, what the counting was put in a grid with all the relevant variables of the study: defense year, gender, postgraduate level, discipline within engineering, and city. So in this way, we intended to systematize this information in order to provide some suggestion for policy, for national policy. Okay, which are the results? The results were sorted in three categories. The first of it has to do with postgraduate levels. So as regards, I will make, of course, a very quick overview. We see here that, of course, as I was saying, the majority of the theses that are made visible through the repositories start from the year, in this case, 2010. The same thing happens with the masters and with doctorates. And just this overview can give us an idea of the great majority, male majority. And besides that, how the number of theses decreases as we move on from specialization to master and doctorate. And we have, in the master level, we have the greatest width between men and women. Okay, as regards geographical distribution, we can say that we have very polarized graphs. Okay, you can see that some faculties, that means the distribution by region, by faculties, some of them concentrate the great majority. Only in the doctoral level, it seems to become more, a little bit more even, but not too much. So I will systematize these three graphs in a chart where you can see that the number of faculties with the majority of men surpassing women were 7 against 1 in specialization, 11 against 3 in master level, and 3 against 4. This is the only level in which the number of faculties where men surpass women is greater, okay? Then we have some even results that have to do with either because they approach the same amount or because there are none in men and women. And we can systematize, okay, and then the third category of sorting the result has to do with area of specialty. There are many. The only one that we have at the three levels at specialization, master and doctorate is information system engineering. Then Again, we have a very polarized situation as regards specialization, with many specialties concentrating the majorities. We still have some majority of women. We will see them in a chart here again, and doctoral. Again, we could say that doctoral level tends to make them the results more even. And we can systematize them by saying that the areas of knowledge outnumbered by men are 7 in specialization, 11 in master, against very low number. And again, in doctorate, we have the majority of women. I wrote here the names of the careers, of the degrees, in case you are curious about which are the ones that the women outstand. Okay, so this is like a very quick view of the result of this empirical study. I will go back to the objectives, and I will say that the first main objective that referred to the number of theses made available at the repository are 145 at specialization level, 128 at master, and 43 doctorate, which makes a total of 316. Let me tell you that the total number of theses defended, not from 2000, but from 2012, is 3,430. So you can notice that there's still a lot to do to upload all these theses to the repository so that we can achieve the visibility that we want to reach. The other specific objective had to do with evolution over time. And we see that, of course, we have an increase of the number of theses available at the repository. They go more or less in parallel. Of course, men surpass women. There are some tiny occasions in which women surpass, but we can really tell that there's a male majority. And as regards the third objective that has to do with the proportion, the ratio of men and women, we have here the details, but level. And if we sum up everything, we could say that 35% are the representation of women and 65 men. So we can say that there's not a preponderance in a certain career or in a certain faculty, but the results are more or less spread. So arriving to the final comment, we can say that as a general trend, women are surpassed by men. So in that sense, we could say that dissertation and its visibility is another indicator of gender gap. However, we have seen that in some levels, regions, or specialties, women outnumber men. So the diagnosis will depend on whether we focus on the numerical majorities or on the spaces won by women. So in this respect, I want to refer to some gains to finish with these positive outcomes. Let's look, for example, at the way the university announces the Researcher Day. I imagine you remember the way it was shown in the website of the Research Council. Here we have a more inclusive image. At the same time, I can refer to a prize that is organized by this university that I had referred to, plus another Argentinian university and the University of Deusto, a Spanish university, who are organizing this prize. And I take the opportunity to greet our friends and colleague Javier Anunay from Deusto University. Then I will like to refer to a whole book referred to Latin American engineering women, written by edited by the Argentinian Council of Engineering Careers Dean and the Latin American and Caribbean Consortium of Engineering Institution. So if we focus in the positive outcomes, as I wish we all do, we can replace the original idea of the desert by one of the oases. Thank you, Andreas, for providing these beautiful pictures. And that depends on what we do. Regarding future actions, the study of postgraduate thesis has brought a closer insight of this visibility aspect that we value because it can enforce, we can encourage other women in taking the scientific and engineering path. Because of the impact factor that we know it's a very common code nowadays, and the citation index. And a crucial policy at this respect should be that women themselves work on making their thesis visible and available from the websites, for these repositories. In this sense, it is interesting to mention the existence of an international organization devoted to promoting the adoption, creation, use, dissemination of electronic thesis and dissertation, which has regular conference. The previous was in our lovely city of Porto, and there's one very soon. And it has just launched a journal, which for sure will provide many insights about these topics. In the same way, I will encourage the replication of this study and also the comparative ones to have an idea within different regions. In that sense, I want to mention a working process that we are doing with NARA about comparing these results, the ones that I presented, with the most important universities in Latin America, like UNAM in Mexico and USP in Brazil. They have an enormous amount of dissertation, so it's a lot of work, but it's very interesting to see what happens there. Another comparative study that I want to announce for you is one that we will present in the CEFI conference. This involves not only Latin American, but Argentina, South Africa, and Czech Republic. So I wish we have many of these comparative studies. Conferences are another great places to make visible the production of women engineering. And in that sense, I want to mention some ones who have a current call open right now, so you can run and send your proposal, which are this one that will take place in Madrid in November, organized by the great Manuel Castro. I hope you don't miss his keynote tomorrow. And this other one that is, well, this is in fact a track that we will organize with these two marvelous Portuguese colleagues, Clara and Natercia, as part of the team conference. Of course, there are many other interesting tracks that you should take advantage of. And of course, I want to finish by highlighting the great bravery of EDUCON for taking women in engineering as the conference theme. Throughout the rest of the conference and afterwards in the proceedings, I am sure that you will find a huge source of information about this topic to consult and make visible. So enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you very much for your attention, and please feel free to make comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria, very much for your presentation and the story. Please feel free to ask questions. We have 6 minutes for a questions and answers session, so you can write them in a chat room or ask directly. There is one comment in the chat. In the United Kingdom, the gender split appears to arising at schools, approximately between 10 and 14 years old. From my perspective, it appears to result from having a very genderized curriculum at that age, topics, ways of learning, role models, etc. I wonder what Professor Pozo's thoughts are on doing a similar study for this age range. So it was 10 to 14 years old.
Oh, well, yeah, definitely. I mean, that is a very interesting period of life to study. It's a matter of focusing. I mean, unfortunately, these studies take so long and so much energy that we have to set a period of time and focus in that. But of course, the matter of gender gap can be addressed from different period of schooling, of education. That's a very interesting period that Rupert proposes, because in that period we have the social ideas of what a woman should be in her adult life. So there are another variables involved. It's not only what the school does, but what the social environment wants women to do. So the school has a lot to do, and having these curricular approaches in order to break down those barriers is definitely a great path to take. So I think it's really a good idea, and I encourage you to do that.
Thank you. There is also one comment from Zofia. I've seen studies indicating that children as young as 5 years old show gender stereotypes. Have you noticed these studies also in younger age or later?
Yeah, stereotypes are present since we are born. I mean, they cross our lives from the very beginning. So it's school, or also the family, if possible, the one that is responsible to make a reflection, an explicit reflection on these stereotypes. That is the only way that we can change them. Otherwise, they will stuck in our brains and will lead us to a certain direction.
I have one question. I was reading yesterday Harvard Business Review about why women leave engineering field when they have entered, studied, and then leave early. Maybe it also regards the postgraduate studies, that women are more interested in social, humanitarian questions about society in general, and maybe could it be that their research, they also are interested in how technology can help people, or other things which are maybe not so popular because they are not so, how to say, there is no business. Maybe there is no funding for such kind of research or something. Have you noticed some kind of connection there among the interests of women in general, like in wide?
Yeah, well, definitely. But then I would go back to this issue of the stereotypes, because it's not that there is a biological predisposition to choose a certain area of knowledge. It is all modeled by society. So it's still this need to revise those stereotypes in order to change the presence of women. It's indeed, as you said, what you said is what we see in the statistics, but that's the result. If these colleagues are referring to the schooling period, then we have to do another kind of work, and it has to do with talking and making explicit these social ideas. I'm making short questions so that I can answer all of them, because I know we soon have to finish.
Yeah, we have like 1 minute. There's one more question. Hello, did you have data about the social and economic background of the women that follow the PhD studies?
Well, that's a good question. No, unfortunately, we didn't. I don't know if it was clear from my presentation, but the information is really scarce. It's very poor. I mean, it's very hard to find in this kind of information. When we wanted to know the total number of theses defended, we had to write a formal letter, explain why we want this information, and all that bureaucratic proceeding was to get just the number. So imagine we have to engage in a deeper study with lots of obstacles, but hopefully we can do it, and maybe I can share it with you in the future.
Thank you very much. Yes, if there are no questions here, maybe somebody wants to ask something. If not, then I could only mention from myself that I'm happy to be the chair of this session because I happen to work in school. I'm computer science teacher actually, and I do teach. I really teach these young children from 10 to 14. It's exactly that age group which I'm working with, and currently we are learning Scratch programming. So it's a topic for my thought. Food for thought for me, how to work on these, not to add gender stereotypes for the girls, because I do notice they are very, very smart in programming. They are doing very, very well. So that's just food for me, food for thought.
Okay.
And, yes,
you have
thank you.
Ben.
Yes, I do. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Maria, for your presentation, for giving us some information to think about. And maybe somebody wants to cooperate. You will have contact details in Maria's presentation later on. And this will be also recorded, so you may come back and listen to this keynote because, well, we have to talk to Anne later about this. Thank you very much, and see you later in other sessions.
Yeah, we go to the other keynote. Thank you so much for your chair. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Anne, for cooperation too.
Okay, can we switch?
Yes, we will switch.
Okay, yes, we stay in the same room.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Maria. Thank you very much, Anne and Evia, for this exciting keynote. Now we switch the focus and we switch to another keynote. It's my great pleasure to introduce Olga Wieberg. Olga Wieberg, I met 3 or 4 years ago, first time at the conference in Thessaloniki. And when I was listening to her speech, I was thinking, oh, if you are organizing a conference, then you should invite this very, very interesting scientists. So here we are, and Olga Wieberg, to present her to everybody, is an associate professor in media technology with a specialization in technology enhanced learning at the Department of Media Technology and Interaction Design at the KTH Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm. She received her PhD in informatics from the Örebro University in Sweden. And her fields of expertise include technology enhanced learning, self-regulated learning, learning analytics, mobile learning, learning design, and design science research in higher education. So today she will present a keynote fostering student self-regulated learning to support study success, a learning analytics approach. And please, Olga, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andreas, for a nice introduction, nice presentation, and hello, everyone. So I will just try to share my screen and I will start. Let's see. I think it's okay now, right? Yeah. Okay, so as Andreas mentioned, I'm part of the Division of Media Technology Interaction Design and represent pretty much male-dominated university, both faculty-wise and also student-wise. However, we are working very hard on attracting women, both in education and also in the faculties. So in the recent efforts during the 5-7 years, I think have shown some results. We actually at our department have around 35–40% of women students taking part of this engineering education. So most of the education we offer is kind of different kinds of engineering education. I do also teach a number of courses in master and bachelor and doctoral level, focusing on media technology and specifically on the design of educational technology to be used in both higher educational settings and also in K-12 education. So today I'm going to talk about a very different topic than Maria presented. It's about self-regulated learning. And why? Because self-regulated learning today, or self-regulated learning skills, are critical actually for academic success, especially in increasingly emerging online learning environments worldwide. So on the agenda today, I'm going to introduce a number of concepts, which probably some of you have heard before, some are new, but they are pretty busy and pretty complex. And I will start with introducing self-regulated learning, how it's connected to study success, how we have been measuring and supporting self-regulated learning so far and how we can do it now, and the learning analytics approach for self-regulated learning today. What is that? So probably a lot of new information for some of you heard it before. Anyway, I will start with introducing the concept of self-regulated learning, which refers to the process where students activate and sustain cognitions, affects, and behaviors that are systematically oriented towards the attainment of personal goals. The area is not really new. It's very much researched by psychologists and other researchers for many, many years. However, it became increasingly interesting and increasingly important in online settings today. So self-regulated learning includes student use of self-regulated learning strategies. For example, their strategies to manage their time when studying, to set their goals, personal goals, also refers to the course objectives, for example, of the chosen program courses, and also effort regulation, and there are many more. It also includes the responsiveness to self-oriented feedback about learning effectiveness, which requires from them feedback literacy, how they interpret this feedback. And also it's about the interconnected motivational processes. So motivation, feedback, and strategies are part of this pretty complex process that's really important for the students. So why I'm talking about it? As I mentioned just some couple of minutes ago, it has been shown to be associated with learning academic achievement. It's also a transferable skill. So it's not a subject skill that we can teach. It's a skill that can be developed and can be taken with us in other situations, work-related or other study situations. It's also something that can be taught and learned. We are not born with this skill, and also controlled by the learners. However, research has shown that students are not really good regulators of their own learning. It's difficult for them, as most are not really capable to accurately calibrate their learning processes. They don't capable accurately measure it and understand how they can support their learning process better. And also it shows that there is a need to empower teachers and learners to make informed decisions about their learning process. So teachers also need kind of support. Today, the research and the recent studies published on this COVID emergency have shown that students actually struggle in online learning environments if they do not use critical self-regulated strategies, which affects their well-being and also it affects their academic success. Teacher presence somehow is low now compared to classroom settings, and students need to structure their own study much better compared to what they have been offered before. Which also means that they need additional support. Online learning settings today actually provide an increased access to new types of learning behavioral and process data and so-called big data. So where does this data come from? It comes from the widely used learning management system. It comes from massive online courses, personal learning environments, virtual learning environments, etc., etc. Different online learning system that students and teachers and other stakeholders in education settings use. So we should be able to do something with this data today and try to, based on this type of measurement examination, provide some improved support for student learning and improved support for teachers to be able to help or assist students in these settings. What do we mean by success, academic success? For me, academic success is not only about improved grades, which usually is something that people measure and researchers would like to see, how well they progressed compared to the previous term or whatever. But it's also about skill development. If they become better in setting their goals, if they become better in time management, if they become better in effort regulation, these skills are much more important for taking further with them in other courses, in other programs, in other types of education or learning opportunities. It's also about improved learning support. If we can, based on these kind of measurements, provide improved learning support, it's also a success. How we have been measuring self-regulated learning before, we measured it basically as a static kind of process, but it's not. Learners' ability to use self-regulated learning strategy is not static. It changes throughout the learning process. And frequent methods, as I mentioned, they look at it as static ability. We use usually, and still are using, subjective assessment methods, looking at it is aptitude through, for example, interviews or self-reported surveys, or we also look at it as event, a very much more complex process by offering students or other stakeholders think aloud methods, method to detect error and task and trace methodology based on observations. So this is what we have been doing so far and still are doing. And I'm not saying that is wrong, but it doesn't give you a picture how the learning process progress. So recently, the latest 5-10 years, the research is recognizing the potential of learning analytics as a means of examining and supporting students' self-regulated learning. And I guess many of you have heard about learning, and it's probably some of you know what it is, probably not, but it's pretty complex process, which refers to the measurement, collection, analysis, reporting of data about learner students, and also their settings for purposes of understanding and optimizing learning in the environments in which it occurs. So there are two really important parts. It's firstly understanding, and based on this understanding, we have to develop some kind of optimization of learning. So learning analytics is about collecting traces that learners leave behind and using those traces to improve learning, according to Erik de Waal, who unfortunately died some years ago. How we have been measuring, so the field is really increasingly emerging. There is specific conferences on learning analytics and so on and so on. How do we measure evidence? So if this type of research can show that learning outcomes can be improved, it's successful. If learning analytics show improved learning support and teaching, it's success. If it's taken up, used widely, and used in an ethical way. So you see there are many different aspects of these kind of evidence or propositions that can be used to prove whether this learning analytics research is successful or not. So if you want to read a bit more, you can read the Rebecca Ferguson and Doug Klaus article about where the evidence based on the large sample of empirical studies done and examined in the European context. So this is another thing, the learning analytics. What is that? It's a lot of many things. It's about data. As I mentioned, it's data, it's interaction data, it's traces that students leave behind them. It's about personal data, it's academic information. So there can be different databases we use actually for this analysis in either single form or mixed form. So it's about also data aggregation. The second part of this complex process is analytics. So we use different techniques. We use statistical analysis, we use visualization, social network analysis, emotional intelligence, sequential analysis, and so on and so on. And based on that, we interpret the data. And we interpret the data for different purposes. We interpret the data for purposes of, for example, prediction. We probably would like to predict how good a particular student will do in the settings that he studies. Purpose of intervention, we would like to help the student during the learning process. Recommendation, personalization, which has to do with adaptive learning opportunities or adaptive learning, I would say, pathways that many people are looking at now. Reflection and interaction. And also we have to think about whom we are doing it for. Who is the stakeholder? Are we actually aiming at learner, at instructor, at researcher, or education institutions? Because we can, through this type of analysis, help education institutions also to improve the design of the courses, improve the design of the programs, and so on and so on. So if you would like to read a bit more about this, you can go to this article on learning analytics principles and constraints. So for a couple of years ago, we did a pretty extensive study. We looked at 252 papers published, empirical papers published in higher educational settings on whether learning analytics actually do what it promised to do. And we actually found little evidence at that time. So among the papers we looked at, we found only 9% of the papers that showed evidence that learning analytics improve learning outcomes, basically. A little bit more evidence for the proposition that learning analytics improve learning support and teaching. Very few studies do it on a wide scale. So very many do it in a very small course settings with smaller amount participants, and use it in an ethical way. No, very small amount of studies. So again, it doesn't mean that they have done it unethically, but it doesn't show any kind of evidence in their written articles. And we should be really careful about it, since we use student-generated data and also combine data from different data sets. However, what is learning analytics for SRL? Learning analytics for SRL afford opportunities to learners to exercise SRL, to practice different strategies, for researchers to collect, measure, understand, and report data about learner and their learning environments, and for teachers to help students to develop their SRL. So they can be given opportunities to offer a relevant support mechanism for the students. Using LA, we can also evaluate self-regulated learning strategies and learning responsiveness. So students and teachers, what do they appreciate? They appreciate better understanding of their own learning behaviors. They would like to see how it goes. They appreciate timely feedback intervention. They also appreciate personalized assistance and information that facilitates independent learning. What more? We also can offer different perspective on learning. We can offer on a micro level, on individual level, to help particular student to make more personalized adaptive learning paths. On meso level, on a course level or class level, adaptation of teaching strategies, so teacher can go and help the students. And also, as I mentioned before, on a micro level, institutional level. So there are different levels we can talk about. So while learning analytics again for SRL, it helps to monitor progress position, adjust strategies, identify acquire successful learning strategies, to plan learning steps in the future, and to keep focus, for example, on the goals set in the course by the student themselves, or the goals set by the course organizers provided in the course syllable, and also to motivate the learner. We also did last year and published another study on self-regulated learning online environments, and noticed that so far we have been measuring stuff. We are not providing any kind of support mechanism. We're measuring because we do have access to data, and this is why the field is really increasingly growing now. So we have seen here that 59 of the papers that we looked at, and we looked at around more than 100 papers here, didn't offer any kind of support based on this measurement. Those who provided kind of support, they provided visualization, going to talk about it, feedback and recommendations. And very similar results to the previous study on a larger scale. So we do not see really increase in learning outcomes, and we still see limited support for improving learning and teaching with a focus on SRL here. So to summarize, it's about measurement, calculation, and recommendation. And I'm going very shortly to mention what kind of measurements we have been doing, just very shortly, and focus very much more on the support mechanism that we are developing. So this is some examples of the studies that we have published last year, and actually won the overall paper award at the conference of ICCE. So we looked at how students employ self-regulated learning strategies in the context of academic writing course, what type of strategies they enable, and how they process, sequential by sequential process mapping. And also we compare top achievers and bottom achievers to compare, which strategies are enabled by which by those students who are more successful and less successful, and how does it matter. And also, as I say, you can take a look at this article later on and read it a little bit more. This is another type of measurements we use on the data that we access. So we use psychological network analysis of self-regulated learning strategies to show the co-occurrence of different strategies they use. We also use different sequential clustering of learning sessions to show how it evolves all the time. and also the relationship among self-regulated learning strategy, figure 7 down there, that shows how different strategies relate to each other during a certain period of time. So there are so many different types of measurement that we can use, but what should we do with that? What should we say, how we should provide different types of support based on these type of measurements? So learning analytics is about learning, and don't forget about that. So we have to provide relevant support based on learning theories, as well as integrating them into the instructional design. So the theory that we have been using, or in my team and my research, is a Zimmerman's theory of self-regulation that posits that students start with their kind of performance, or not performance, forethought phase, a planning phase, where they set goals, where they plan strategically different tasks they do. Then they do performance, they do different tasks and they monitor them. They use different strategies, and then they end with the self-reflection phase consisting of self-judgment and self-correction. So it's a cyclical process that you have to keep in mind when you develop any kind of support or providing feedback to the students. So it's not about just help them with the planning or help them with the monitoring or self-reflection. You have to think about the whole cycle. There are other different models that can be interesting to look at, and you can take a look at the article which is presented down there to Panadero, a review of self-regulated learning, where he presents different models used in this type of research. So, so far, the variety of the illustrated research support is bounded, and prevailing part of existing support is presented in the form web-based student-centered learning dashboards, and I'm going to talk about them soon. However, we also need to develop other types of support, and I would propose how to develop mobile technology to help the students and integrate this type of support for the purpose of understanding SRL of continuous prose rather than static prose as well. So one example, I will show you some examples kind of support tools that we have developed. Last year also we have published an article on help aiming at learning designers to help language learners with the self-regulation. So it's a conceptual framework based on the self-regulated learning theory, as you see to the left there, which informs the learning analytics cycle. So how this learning model should be informed, and also by the characteristics of mobile assisted language learning, but it's a design characteristic, contextualization, and task design. Published in the special issue of Learning Pathway to Impact, and also importantly here to think about the privacy, ethics, and security, since the use of this mobile technology can actually provide us with a lot of data about learners on an individual level, contextual data, individual data, Google data, whatever data. So we have to think about how we can design privacy to protect the student and to enable the agency, so we can actually not intervene in this integrity and privacy stuff. Based on this framework, we also developed a personalization frame that can be used by the learning designer and also by the teacher, because a learning designer can be a teacher. So learning designer can be hired by education institutions separately, but it also can be provide guidelines to a teacher. Sorry, I will go back. And also like what type of data needed to be designed and how should go around. So just a very short example. Another example of the study that we presented at the recent European Conference, Technology Enhanced Learning, is a mobile service that also based on the SRL theory. As you see the first slide there, planning, doing, and reflection, which is done in collaboration with one of the Japanese universities we have a project together with. So we have developed a mobile service that helps language learners to regulate their language studies on the site. So basically they use it as a complement to their language education to regulate their efforts when studying a new language. So if you would like, you can take a look at this as well. I don't think I have time to show you the video, but since I have some more slides to go through. And also, this is another example of the work we are currently conducting. So we are working with a number of student master level and also higher level of doctoral level. So we have been developing a tool on supporting engineering students, their time management and goal setting skills. So it's a bit work in progress, but it's also based on the theory that I'm talking about. And the tool is supposed to be used by the student in educational context of higher education. The reason why we're doing that so much of the work in learning has been done, in the context of MOOCs, because there is data available and trying to help this. But how we actually can help students in educational settings, which also is the actually online learning settings all the time now. So this is developed by the students under my supervision. And in this, we focus on goal setting, learning objective of the course, you see to the right there, and also students can set up their own learning goals, which may differ between the course goals and what they have in their mind to participate in the course, because they can come in the course with different pre-knowledge and pre-competencies and may have different ambitions in participating in the course. So basically they plan their studies, manage the time and try to see the progress here, and also so you see to doing and done. And this is something, if you would like to talk to me afterwards, I can explain a bit more. So I promised to come back to the learning dashboards. Probably some of you also heard about it or not, but learning dashboards are known to improve decision-making by visualizing learning process and helping to track where learning process evolve as expected or where potential issues may occur. So we cannot really design learning directly. We can only provide better conditions for learning. And this is some kind of tool that we use to provide improved conditions for students' learning. So what is Learning Analytic Dashboard? It's a single display that aggregates different indicators about learners, learning process, and learning context into one or multiple visualizations. It also can be defined as a visual interface that captures and visualizes traces of learning activities in order to promote awareness, reflection, and also sense making. So you see, it's not about like making them more aware only, but helping them to reflect on what they see and helping them to make sense, to act, to change their learning behavior if they need to change this learning behavior, basically. So this is examples of different learning dashboards that I just took out from Google and see. So there are different institutions, different companies developing such kind of tools. But very few of these tools are actually used in educational settings. And I'm wondering why. So in the process of development interactive visualizations, we have to consider who are they aiming at. So who is the user? Is it a teacher or is it a learner? Or is it a learning advisor? What are the tasks we would like to visualize and what is the data we'd like to use? So this is the basic question we have to think about. What type of behavioral change you would like to focus on? So target users can be teachers. We can also have a teacher-facing dashboard helping teacher to see how the student progress in this learning environment. Also study advisors and researchers. And this is to the right some examples of the sketches that my students have been doing in sketching different type of learning, how they would like to see, and I will show you shortly the outcome a bit of their work. So they come up with some ideas to build in a learning dashboard in Canvas, because we use Canvas on a wide scale, and Canvas is used by many universities. So they see that we would like to see, they said that we would like to see how we progress based on how we use Canvas. So they been working on from a participatory design ground. So they've been involving other students in this process of co-designing and developing this dashboard to see actually what information they would like to see in order to make any change. So this is one example. This is another example from also a big course that they use. And mostly they want to see how they manage the content of the course, how they manage different tasks on a personal level and also on a group level. So when we think about these dashboards, we should think about that it should generate intended changes in its users. It's nothing that just to get awareness, we would like to see the change. And so far, we haven't seen so much changes for different purposes. We so far use different learning management system data, for example, from Moodle or Canvas. We looked at average time spent on assignment pages, duration per web session, time between assignment submission, and so on, so on, so on. And I've been looking at the study and saying why we are doing that. Should we believe the learner? So one of the recent studies which actually compared subjective assessment measures with like learning analytical measurements showed that behavioral measures were not well correlated with the survey measures, except learner self-reported time management strategies, level of motivation, which shows that we actually have to do that. We have to try both to ask the students how it's going for them, but also to measure independently of what they tell us, because they are not clearly can see actually how it goes for them. So what do we know about learning facing dashboards? We know that most of them developed attainment learners. We know that most developed to support students self-regulated learning. We also know that dashboards often fail to support students in translating awareness into action to improve regulation. So this is something that we have to think about. And current dashboards are designed to mostly support the performance phase of self-regulated learning, which doesn't show the whole process of this cycle, you know, the planning, monitoring, and the self-reflection. And why they're failing to support learners for different purposes. We, for example, should think that to design learning dashboard as a pedagogical tool that enhances awareness reflection. It also should use educational concepts from learning sciences to motivate design decision. Comparison with peers should be costly. We don't know whether they would like to be compared or not. Some would, some wouldn't, depending on the also cultural preference, I guess. The dashboard would not have the same effect on all the users. It will suit some users better, some users less better, which suggests that it should be customizable. They should be able to choose information they would like to see to meet their needs better. It should be also seamlessly integrated into online learning environments. As I said, for example, in Canvas, they don't want like many different other tools to use on the side. They would like to be use it in inside the learning management system, online learning system that's already in use. Also, we should focus not only on examining usability of it, but also whether actually it helps to change the learning behavior or not. So far, it's a lot of usability examination, how usable, ease of use they perceive it. And also dashboard evaluations should use data triangulation to validate effects with self-reported data, track data, and assessment data, and so on. And you can read a bit more about it in the reference list I can provide later as well. So to summarize a bit, we should have a pedagogical reason for designing learning dashboard, not just because we have data available. We should think about why we're using this data, what type of data, and what type of change we would like to make in the users. We should involve stakeholders as co-designers of such dashboards. We should involve students, we should involve teachers. Otherwise, we would miss, the whole point, what they would like to see, what they would like to change, and so on and so on. So at different stages, we should involve them from the very beginning. And also, research has shown that learners are so far rarely consulted in deciding what information should be displayed. And also what West and his colleagues saying that it's unethical to assume that we know what students want, what their concerns are, and how they would like data to be presented. So to sum up a bit, we have shown that learning research so far being used to measure rather than to support SRL, which suggests that it's a critical need to exploit LA support mechanism further to be able to ultimately use them to foster SRL, to make an impact basically on the changes in potential behaviors. So thank you very much. I think maybe too much information, probably not, but you're very welcome to ask me any questions you have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Olga, for your inspiring keynote. And And thank you very much that you made it possible that you could personally present it. So is my co-chair here? Hua, are you here? No. Okay. In any case, please put your questions in the chat or just ask. I don't see nothing in the chat, so please ask directly. Who wants to start?
I think many messages in the chat.
You see many. There's one. Do you think SL skills might be developed in students while mastering any disciplines?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I think this is the point. You know, we are working in engineering educational settings, but these skills are really important for the curriculum integration at any subject. So, I mean, they are transferable skills. They are skills that can be adapted for different subject disciplines. So with these skills, students should be able actually to manage different subjects better, I guess, and also in their life learning situation and so on and so on.
So Sally is asking, with the limitations you have highlighted, is it too early to start to consider using learning analytics to support students to improve co-regulation? I
think it's not too early, but when we do such type of measurements today, we have to think about why we are doing that, what type of change or what type of stakeholder, what type of improvements we would like to make before we do these measurements, not because only we have data available, which makes sense, you know, but also like for what purposes in terms of improved learning we actually aim at. And this is something that has been criticized a lot. And there are some, of course, the recent couple of conferences, there are some changes, but we are still there, unfortunately.
Okay, Robert is asking, could you expand on the differences in learner reflection between top and bottom achievers in your Markov model, and more generally, your views on the role of reflection in supporting SRL?
The difference is, so firstly, I would like to say it's very contextual. So we looked at the core settings of academic writing with there's like a number of students of 100 something, I don't remember now exactly. So it's pretty small course still. The difference is what type of strategies they enable in the first hand, where they start from, for example, whether they start with the cognitive strategies or social affective strategies and how this evolves. And also we looked at the top and bottom achievements, like only 10%, which we usually do. We don't look at the whole population. But you can take a look at this study and see, I wouldn't generalize. It may differ depending on the other indicational context. It also may differ on the type of the students who are being examined, I would say.
Okay, Monica is asking, did you think about using multi-model data learning analytics with variables and sensors?
Yeah, there is actually the whole group of people doing multimodal learning analytics. So if you are interested, you can find recent research. We had a last week conference, learning analytics and knowledge conference. So yes, there are people doing it, but still a little bit small scale studies, and I think they are challenging to scale up. We would like to have our scale up research with a big impact. So far, very much done in classroom settings, but yes, of course, a really big group at Norway, for example, Norwegian Institute of NTNU, and also in London and in Australia. So if you would like, you can email to me. I can give you some references.
Okay. Evia is asking, could you recommend any learning dashboard to start with? I'm ready, but we have none in our school.
No, I'm not, because the thing is that it's also a problem. Most of them are not open source. Most of them are very much developed by researchers at specific universities. And this is nothing that has been shared, which also hinders the adaptation of the learning dashboards. So sorry.
So Deborah is saying, I like the idea of students being able to set up the LMS with the items they need or you find useful. Do you know of any that allow them to do this?
I know that there is a recently defended thesis by Olga Wieberg just some weeks ago by the Open University Netherlands. They have developed a customized learning dashboard, but to be used in the MOOC settings. But I will put in a chat maybe, or just send me email. I will send you a link to the thesis. So the idea is to offer students opportunities to be able to customize, to choose, what they would like, what data they would like to see. And again, I'm not sure it's shareable. It's not an open source, but there is a process describing the thesis and evaluation done, so you can take a look. Yeah.
Monica again is asking, did the students sign an agreement about data protection regulations and ethics?
Ideally, yes, but it's also a process on a policy level at different institutions. So this is something that should be enabled every particular institution in the first hand, how to enable and protect responsible use of student data. It's not very clear and obvious. We have GDPR legislation, we have different legislation, but how to operationalize it on education level, it's a policy work for institutional administration, I guess. But yes, we should do that.
And our last question, which we can ask here, from Olga Reshkina, might these skills be considered as meta-subject competences?
Yes, they may, of course. They should at the end.
Okay, I think any other questions, please send it directly to Olga. I think she will be happy to answer.
I can have a follow-up session sometime.
Yes,
yeah.
Maybe we can organize this in another way, because by the way, we are organizing sometimes in Egypt. We are organizing specialized workshops, and then we can think about that.
Yeah.
I will speak with one of my colleagues if she's interested to put it on the calendar. So thank you everybody who had been here. We have now a short break and we will start at 3 p.m. Central European Summertime with the next sessions. In the next sessions we have 6 parallel sessions, yes, and 2 of them are special sessions. So check the program and see you on the other sessions or see you tomorrow. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Olga. I wish you all the best. And
yeah, we'll keep in touch. So thank you very much for everyone who came. Yeah, thanks.
Yes,
Bye.
thank you very much. Bye.